Good evening, everybody. My name is Todd Scholl. I am the lead learner at the Center for Educator Wellness and Learning, a center we started through the South Carolina Education Association. And I want to just give a big shout out to everybody at the SCEA, all of our members, our staff, our board. Welcome to tonight's session. Tonight is the first episode of a new show that I've called Cool Explores. I may change that to Cool Ideas. I haven't decided what name I want to choose yet, but the idea behind the show is for us to have some discussion with education thought leaders about topics that maybe we don't normally talk about, and just dig into some stuff and have you participate, you interact with us. You can actually comment on the live stream, and we can bring those comments into the discussion live as we do the show. So hopefully you will participate. We'd love to have you. Even if you just want to introduce yourself and say hi, we'd love any kind of participation if you are watching tonight. So here's tonight's topic. Exploring artificial intelligence and virtual reality's impact on education. AI is getting more intelligent by the day. It's growing exponentially, and virtual reality is getting far more realistic. If you haven't checked out an Oculus Quest or some type of VR headset, you really should. It's amazing. And as the metaverse continues to develop, more and more people are going to socialize, play, and learn in that environment. AI combined with automation and the advancement of robotics is going to generate abundance. We're going to have an amazing amount of products available at such cheap prices. Just consider your TV, for example. 15 years ago, the TV I have would have cost $3,000. Now it costs like $400 or $500. So the power and usefulness of products will drop, and will increase while the prices drop. The problem is that humans will ultimately be replaced as workers. And within that context, as a species, how do we continue to find meaning? So for centuries now, humans have largely defined their lives by their careers. So when someone says, what do you do? Typically, the answer is going to be your job title, what your career is. We've constructed our schools around this. So the primary objective seems to be, whether it should be or not, to produce workers for the global economy. But what happens when the global economy no longer needs those workers, or doesn't need them as much as they used to? Then what will be the purpose of schools? If big businesses and corporations no longer need human labor, will they continue to support the notion of funding public education at all? I'm not knowledgeable enough to know how quickly this shift in society will happen, but if we trust the experts, the shift is moving exponentially, while we are responding to it in a linear fashion. And I think our lack of foresight could create many unintended problems. As educators, we must understand deeply the promise and the risks posed by AI and virtual reality. We must think critically about how technology will increasingly disrupt our current models. We must begin evolving now, considering career readiness maybe as a secondary goal to human wellness, happiness, compassion, and peace. If we fail to start evolving, I fear we could have a collapse of public education that will come much sooner than we think. Well, with me tonight to discuss all of this and share their ideas, I have three educators: Stacy Lovdahl, Maggie Cox, and Khadija Hamidani. So I'm going to go ahead and just bring them in now. Welcome everybody from around the world, literally from around the world. Welcome to tonight's discussion. Hopefully, Stacy, you can hear us. Are we good? Awesome. All right. So what I'd like you to do is just start off we'll start with Maggie, then go to Stacy, then Khadija. If you'll just introduce yourselves, like where you're from and what you do, and maybe a little introduction of what you think about this topic. So we'll start with Maggie.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. My name is Maggie, and I am a career and technical education teacher. So I've been in education about 15 years doing CTE education. So it was interesting to hear your intro talking about where how education changes, how we're looking at workforce changes, because that's something I'm always interested in. I became very interested in augmented reality and virtual reality as I watched the healthcare career move on and how they were adapting. So I started using like augmented reality apps. I would say about 2012. Started teaching on those topics of virtual reality. I've done a lot with Z-Space mixed reality computers, Merge Cube, Ambassador. I know I've met Stacy through some of those groups. So I've started bringing it into my classroom because we know it's happening in the workforce. And I think it's important to expose the students to what they're going to see in college and beyond. So that's what really tipped me off to start my own, research and exploration journey.
Thank you.
Get ready for the kids.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Stacy?
Hi. So I'm like messing with my settings here. So in the spirit of being virtual, this is not my actual house. My husband would love it if we had such a grand piano, but he has a keyboard. So I am Stacy Lovdahl at Brave Neutrino. I wish I would have put my my Twitter handle in there, Maggie. So we follow each other. So I am in North Carolina, and similar, I got involved with all things technology, and because I wanted to, bring the classroom more than, more to my middle school science kids out here in North Carolina, into, a peek inside the world into my classroom. And so that was, my first interest in technology. And then it just kind of, grew from there. So currently with virtual reality, it's not on the, the coding side, and, things like, I think one of the big design engines is Unity, and that's about all I'm going to say about that, in case I get myself into trouble with actual knowledge about it. But is more on the adding to it. And so we've been doing something in North Carolina called NCVR Adventures, where we help teachers and then their students go out and take 360 pictures, and then come back into the classroom and try to give them that immersive experience and some creation ability to, instead of just passively consuming things like Google Expeditions and virtual field trips, give them the chance to actually create their own. So again, trying to go from more of a passive consumptive experience to more of a creative experience with technology.
Awesome. Thank you, Stacy. And Khadija?
Yeah. Well, I'm coming all the way from Malaysia right now, and it's 7 a.m. in the morning over here. So anyway, I am actually doing my research and experiential learning. So this, I got into the field of virtual reality. I was fascinated by it, and I started looking towards it, and I'm looking forward to how it is actually the content is created for virtual reality through project-based learning. So that's my research, and I am looking forward to this thing. So that's pretty much it for me. Not much exposure, but I just got involved in a couple of projects at my university. So that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Cool. Well, one of the things that made me start thinking about this was I bought an Oculus Quest for my daughter about, I think it was like 2 Christmases ago. And I've been using the Oculus Quest, and I've been exploring Horizon workspaces and some of the games and so forth. And I started, and then I watched Mark Zuckerberg's video on the metaverse, and saw how we're moving towards photorealistic avatars. And I started thinking, like, I can actually meet with someone in a virtual workspace right from my home with this $300 headset. And I started thinking, okay, we take this, fast forward this a few years, when you can give a student a $300 headset and they can literally meet with anybody anywhere in the world, travel anywhere in the world, virtual field trips, going into virtual spaces that they create or that other people create, going into like the Roman Colosseum or something like that, or seeing like gladiators, or there's just amazing potential there. And while I see that potential, I also see potential hazards. So let's start off the conversation, if it's okay, with virtual reality. How do you guys see virtual reality headsets and experiences starting to integrate with the public school, with our schools?
Well, one of the things in my medical career tech ed classes I show them is how we're using HoloLens, Oculus in healthcare. And it's been used for pain management. There's a lot of indication that it helps greatly with pain management. It's being used in surgery. So we talk about like multiple surgeons combining in that virtual space. So it's a telehealth situation, and they're more familiar. I would say, pandemic pushed everything up because now they're more familiar with what telehealth means. Well, we can't meet in the room for whatever reason. We can't be in the same room together. Now we have to meet in a virtual space. And I think pandemic kind of pushed it forward for everyone, where they realized like the technology was so important. And when you talk about like the cost, you mentioned the $300 headset now, for years they told us we could not get a computer in every kid's hand, and then pandemic happened and look, we did it. I think the next time we experience something like that, it is not too far off to say the next step is we're going to get all of our teachers trained in, using virtual space. We're going to hand out a $300 headset to every student. I don't think it's that far off. So I think it's really important for educators to start visualizing and thinking that way, and just exposing themselves to trainings and reading. I did a lot of reading this summer on metaverse, but just being open to the ideas. I always tell my students, be open to new ideas. I think that's where we're at with this.
Right. And I've talked to some teachers, and some of them think, well, we tried virtual and it wasn't very good during the pandemic. And they're thinking about it in terms of like Google Classroom or Zoom calls. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure that some of them have truly experienced like real virtual reality, because it's a completely different thing. It's like when you have an avatar and you're in a 3-dimensional space and you almost forget that you're not really there. Like there's some of these games that are so realistic that you really do, like your brain is tricked into feeling like you're actually in that space. Stacy, what are some thoughts or Khadija, feel free to jump in on this.
Stacy, you want to go first or should I?
You go ahead first if you,
Okay. So in Malaysia, when we look at the public education system, I don't think this technology has actually been used or being used too much, especially in the public schools. But it is being utilized in international schools, very few of them, and it's usually because the cost is very high. Secondly, students are not used to this thing, and teachers are not used to this thing as well. And so they mostly go for like 360 videos and Google field trips on expeditions, Google the expeditions and stuff. So that's pretty much the amount of stuff they are looking at right now. But like, for example, in the tertiary level, if you look at the higher education, then there are a couple of projects which are more inclined towards STEM learning and virtual labs. But that's also not too much not too much in use, because again the technology is very expensive. So that's why that's the main thing right now here, the current situation. Yeah.
So like so many points. I'm like taking a note. So the first thing that I thought of while you guys were talking was the idea that the experience with the pandemic pushed us so far forward, like in a blink, when I've been talking about some things in my job as an ITF. And then part of what I do is I'm on loan to North Carolina's Department of Digital Teaching and Learning. So it's a really unique role where I'm still working for my home district, but I also have this other part of my job where I go and do professional development for the western half of the state. And it's really, really cool because I get to see so much of our state and get a peek inside different districts. And so as I've gone around for 4 years I've been online. And before the pandemic, we're saying all these things and everybody's like, yeah, we're coming to PD, and you know how that goes. You have all the teachers in various stages of levels of interest, and I'm super engaging. so there's that. And then the pandemic happened, and we're like, where's that camera? How do I turn that thing on? And so, all of a sudden there's this level of, yeah, now we need to know, right?
It was a chaos all over. All over the world. Everybody was going bonkers.
Yes, we figured out because all of a sudden you need to know. And so we figured out how to do all these things that we've been talking about for years and years and years and years. And so I guess my point there is that I think that when we need to know these things, then all of a sudden we can do things that that we just kind of been talking about for a really long time. But that thing of you're immersed in an experience and you don't even realize it. So many of us haven't had that experience, especially of a certain age, people of a certain age. Now, kids who have been in an Oculus and they're gamers and they have these skills with their thumbs that they can do that I definitely don't have. They know what that feels like. But I think the teachers, the educators who don't have that experience just don't realize. And we need some kind of a need to know kind of experience to get us to that point, because in education, I think first we need that need to know. And then second, once we have that, then as educators, we can figure out how to guide the students into being the ethical, critical thinkers that we need them to be, so that they can design the VR, the algorithms, the coding, all of that behind the scenes stuff, so that all of these tools are good the way we need them to be good.
Right. That's a really good point. I think one of the things I've seen is there's this sort of automatic bias, especially for people who are not early adopters of technology. They're just kind of like, oh, that's not a good thing for kids. Like there's like almost an automatic aversion to it. Like we don't need kids spending time in these digital spaces, which I share the concern to a degree of, like having too much screen time, too much time in a device and not enough time immersed. Like I'm a big fan of outdoor education and getting kids to do, social activities and that kind of thing. But I think folks who haven't experienced it, like Stacy's referring to, underestimate just how powerful it already is and how powerful it's getting ready to be able to take a student from anywhere in the world and put them in the classroom with a world-class teacher teaching in this dynamic environment, able to, at a click of a button, take them anywhere in the world or provide them any kind of like artificial virtual experience. It's so going to be really hard for schools to compete with that, especially given the recruitment and retention crisis that we're going through. There's going to be, I think, this pressure to say, well, if these kids, we're having a hard time recruiting teachers to this district or this school in this rural area, but we could put them in, we could buy Oculus Quest headsets for them and connect them to this world-class algebra teacher or whatever who's going to do a virtual lesson, and it's cost effective. Like it's half the price of trying to recruit a teacher or bringing them in. That's going to be a really difficult thing, and I have both some like hopes and optimism about what that would mean for students, but I also have some concerns about what it would mean for the teaching profession that's already kind of under attack and in decline in a lot of ways. Comments, anybody?
Well, I think we have to view it as another learning tool. It's another way we can reach people. It may not be the only way, and it may not be the best way for everyone, but it's definitely another tool. The other comment I was thinking while you guys were talking was just the importance of those early adopters to bring it to sort of an understanding. I kind of the same way with social media, like somebody's got to be out there, right? If you've got kids playing on the playground, somebody's got to be out there. So I view social media like we have to use social media. The kids are out there. We got to do it. If
Right.
we're learning in a virtual space, we know they're playing these games, they're doing these things. We also need adults there. You know, they need trusted adults in those spaces and understanding those spaces so that we can bring it to them in a way, you know, where they can see some usefulness. It is an education tool. It is a tool for learning. I mean, we're using it a lot in career and technical education as far as like skills and upskilling. And you can learn all sorts of, you know, welding simulations and medical simulations. So, you know, trying to get the kids to love the technology through their game and then kind of redirect them like, let's use this to learn this new skill now. And that's why you need just a few of those early adopters. You know, like Stacy said, she gets to impact half of her state. You need a few people to get out there and kind of spread the word. It isn't scary. We need to learn about it, educate ourselves, educate people, and find a way to make it useful and impactful for them. But I think the technology is amazing. It'll just be, you know, getting them on the right track.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way of putting it, is looking at it as a tool, like any other tool. You know, we used to, you know, drill things with a hand drill, and then you move up to a corded drill. Now, really powerful cordless drills. It's like, it's just another tool. It's just a really incredibly powerful tool that's coming and is going to be utilized by young people. And I think your point's exactly right, that we can let them explore that on their own, or we as adults can say, hey, here's a responsible way, not just a responsible way, but here's how you can create, here's how you can change the world to be a better place in the metaverse or wherever. So like, that's what I've always said is like, TikTok, for example, a lot of educators are like anti-TikTok, and you know, it is kind of banal in a lot of ways, but could we use it as a tool that for kids to create content that's meaningful and useful and spreads good ideas? So I think that's a really good point. Thank you. Other thoughts on that?
Yes, I would actually agree with this thing as well and say that it's a good supplementary tool, but it does not replace the human interaction. So that is much needed for all of us, especially kids. And I think for just making learning more visible and more comprehensible, we can use this.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I wonder, and Stacy, Stacy, go ahead, please, and I'll share.
Just to Khadijah's point, I have had a boss way back when I lived in California, Krish, who said, and it may have been a way for him to just get out of having meetings, I don't know, but he said, never have a meeting unless you need those people face to face to do something that people need to be together to do. And so I feel like that way about school is that one of the things that we are best at when teachers are at their best is bringing kids together. That's what we missed during the pandemic, is we needed kids to be together with us to do what we do best, is to have those rich experiences that you don't get, through a screen. Now, screens are great. We can do things here that there's no way we could do without technology. So, technology is just a tool, but what a tool. I mean, I wouldn't be able to talk with you guys without it. So it does amazing things, but it is not a substitute for a really great face-to-face classroom experience. And so I think we have to kind of message both things, is technology can do some really super awesome stuff, but teachers can do some really super awesome stuff with their students when they have them in their classrooms, and we need both.
100%. And yeah, so I have this philosophical question. I'm gonna ask you guys. So, if you can get virtual reality to be indistinguishable from a real face-to-face interaction, with the exception of maybe like I can't hug somebody. And even that, you could have a haptic suit and you could potentially do something that feels like a hug. But let's just say you can replicate everything other than feeling somebody's hand on your shoulder or whatever. Is this need for this human-to-human interaction face-to-face still going to be there, still going to be the same? will we get to a point as a society where that virtual experience is to our brains so much like a real face-to-face experience that we don't need to have the face-to-face experience? And I'm not making a comment on that, but I wonder that.
No, I don't think so. I don't think that would ever be replaceable, what we have as human and human interaction.
I don't think AI is quite to the point where they can mimic, the understanding between a teacher and a student, or react the way a teacher will. Every student is unique, and that is why you need a teacher to really look at each kid. And that's why I see more of this technology as an application tool that might work best. But I think we're almost, and again, sorry, my background's all medical, but I kind of go back to this diagnosis thing. It's like, as a teacher, you look at each student and you kind of diagnose them like, okay, this one needs this one needs this, right? And you make learning paths kind of unique for a kid, and they may need more technology. They may need the hug.
Yeah.
So it kind of depends on where we go. But I think AI interactions are far from being able to do that. I think we're much closer to creating virtual spaces that will allow for better collaboration. I'm with you there, but I don't think AI teachers are going to replace us just yet.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, I hope not. I hope. So I posed that question not like hoping that we get to that space. My concern is the economic pressure of, once AI is strong enough to replicate a really face-to-face virtual interaction with, it replicates the sort of face-to-face in-person, brick and mortar kind of experience for a student. Will the cost effectiveness of that, if they say, look, these kids who do it this way, their test scores are as good, if not better, and it costs us 1/3 the price of building brick and mortar schools and hiring teachers and paying substitutes and all the buses and the cafeteria, like all that stuff. If they do that, will there be this increasing amount of pressure placed upon our profession? Because then it's like you're competing with someone who never takes a break, doesn't demand a salary, doesn't need benefits. You're competing with an AI. And I take your point, Maggie, that we're not there yet. But my question is, as we move closer to that, how do we avoid the collapse of our profession and this sort of jump to save money in the name of whatever?
But I think but I think it's like, what is the AI doing? Is it information delivery, and what is the face-to-face doing? The face-to-face things that teachers do are different, I think. And even if AI gets really good at whatever it is that we're imagining that it's doing, but if we really went down that path of this virtual world, of what it's doing, what an AI system in this thinking about this collaborative space, or this AI space that AI is creating inside this headset, to me is a different type of space than what is done in the real world, where kids are working together in a face-to-face. Now, does that happen in a traditional school where kids are sitting in a classroom with getting in buses or waiting in the car rider line? Maybe it doesn't look exactly like that, X number of years in the future. But the types of things you do face-to-face with students in a room, or students in a physical setting, I think are different than what they would do if they were learning facts and information in maybe I'm thinking like a gamified virtual reality or augmented reality space.
Again, I would be happy to have an assistant in my classroom. I don't know about you guys, but I've been in some big classrooms. I mean, we are short teachers. I I worked 10 years in Clark County School District. It's the 5th largest in the country. Huge need for special education, for languages. We've got something like 18 different languages in that district. If we get a robot that can speak a language I can't and works in my room with me, I'd be happy. There's ways, again, where we can, as people, we are barely meeting the needs right now because we are so short-staffed that I just don't see. I don't see AI taking over our jobs necessarily. I see it changing our jobs, just as technology is changing many jobs.
Yeah.
We saw that with pandemic. We saw people quickly adjust. Those that hadn't made it to the technology trainings were wishing they had, and those that had started early were happy they had.
Yeah.
Because teachers adapted and the kids adapted. We got computers in everybody's hands and we did it. It wasn't perfect. We learned a lot of lessons. I know our state went back and is reworking things. And I think a lot of people are doing that right now. It will be better. And, we have better online programs this year than we had 3 years ago because of it.
Yeah.
So I think we're just going to continue to adapt to it. But again, I'd be happy with a robot that could speak multiple languages and help disperse information for me, because I might have 35 to 45 kids.
Look, I've been dreaming of my own personal C3PO since I was 6. So, I mean,
Right.
that would be great. Yeah. Khadija, any thoughts?
I think it's great as assistive technology and good for adaptive learning. That's pretty much. Because if you look at it, it cannot actually replace the teacher, but it is great for having in the classroom. If you are having different ESL students, they can learn through that as well.
Yeah. That's a good point. So one of the things I was thinking about, and I don't mean to keep harping on this, but all of the different pressures, though, that could, as AI does get more powerful, as virtual reality becomes more ubiquitous and more powerful, the other thing I was thinking about is, we see these school shootings, and I think that scares a lot of parents to think that my kids really safe going to school? And now you've got all of these sort of false narratives about teachers indoctrinating kids and that kind of all this nonsense stuff that's been going on. And what I'm wondering is, will there be also this pressure from parents to say, listen, I'd be just as happy to have my student do school virtually. That way I can protect them. We're at home. We can travel together. My job has become virtual. So now we're not tied to, driving my child to school, back and forth to school from every day. We can travel the world. We can, get a van, or we can live the van life, or we can get an RV and travel around. And I just wonder about all the different ways that we could be pressured into and start to adopt more and more technologies that will eliminate the need for brick and mortar schools.
And I don't necessarily see that as a bad thing. Like, I know Nevada has adapted to, we do have more options for online learning for our students because some students did better that way. The school I was in during the shutdown was, a pretty high poverty area. And a lot of those kids, without the outside pressures of community and the school pressures that they had of just going to school, they actually increased their grades. So I know, now that didn't happen. My poor little one, she was in kindergarten when we shut down. She had a terrible time because she was just too young. So I think it really depends on the kid. I know we've increased our options in Nevada so that there are even like almost like night school, like they can do it later in the evening. So we have teachers that are teaching during the day and then teaching in the evening online. So we've added some of those things just because it worked for some. It didn't work for everybody. So I think we need to explore all the options and continue to explore them as they become more available. Right now, I think a lot of these things are just cost prohibitive for schools to really do until we hit that breaking point like we did in pandemic that showed them it was financially possible. I think it'll have to happen again. We'll have to have some kind of breaking point that pushes us into the technology.
Interesting.
Yeah, may I say? Okay. So in Malaysia, over the last 2 years, I have been seeing an incline in more homeschooling and adopting for virtual classrooms. So parents are looking forward to that now. They are saying, okay, we are not going to pay too much money to schools just because when we look at the pandemic, half of the stuff wasn't even there, and we were paying for things which were not included in our students' syllabus, or they were not availing the facilities as well. So the parents opted for online learning classes. And I think that there is a greater chance that more virtual learning will take place in the years to come.
Yeah.
So the things that I was thinking while you guys were talking were kind of this choice, or these two competing things of access, the increased access that virtual learning and provides, which is a real draw for this. And I work with Donna Murray in North Carolina, who is a real advocate and very knowledgeable in all things related to accessibility. And the hashtag is all means all. That we talk about that, and we really advocate for. And especially during the pandemic, some of those students were the ones that were the most difficult to stay connected with. And so that's huge, right? That and the idea of choice, that learning can happen everywhere. So if we have access to virtual settings where kids can, go and families can be on the road, then that's amazing. It also kind of comes with a certain amount of privilege to be able to do that.
Yes.
So there's a whole big box of that going on. But then the other part of it that came to mind also is public education also is a big unifier. It keeps us all on the same page to a certain extent. And that's also a worry. If we're all running around doing all of these various things, variety is good, because it is, kind of that, being a science teacher, sometimes these imbalances are what kind of cause change. So again, there's a good and there's a bad, and I don't know where that all shakes out, to tell you the truth, but it's a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot. It's a lot to think about. And when I did the opening, I feel like the change is happening so quickly, and I think it's coming quicker than a lot of people realize. Like the exponential growth and power of these devices, and then the cost of them coming down. I think we're going to see some very quick changes, and I'm not sure if we need to have this kind of discussion everywhere. Every district, every school needs to be having these kind of discussions about what does this technology mean? And one of the things to get out ahead of that I've been advocating for is to be rethinking what we sell the public as not that we should have to sell it, but what we tell the public is the purpose of an education. I think the more we tie it to the idea that the only purpose behind it is to prepare kids for a career, I think we do ourselves a disservice. And the reason why is because if we can prove that we can prepare kids for a career through these technologies as well, if not better than these face-to-face experiences, then it's going to be hard to tell people, no, we shouldn't save money and we shouldn't do it more effectively if we've got these technologies that are allowing us to do it. And I take your point that may not be 5 years from now, maybe a 10, 20-year thing, but I think that's coming. So I've been arguing that this school should be about increasing human flourishing, however that looks. If that means kids need to get outside and go on hikes and experience nature, if kids need to do mindfulness, if kids need to do get therapy, if kids need to exercise, and we need to be focused and telling the public we're educating the whole child. We're not just preparing them for a test or for a career. We're preparing them for life. So I think Neil Postman said, education is not just about getting a living; it's about creating a life, something like that. So what are your thoughts on that?
I have so many. As a career and technical educator, obviously I speak to careers daily. And when I talk to the kids, and I deal with some middle school, high school, I've got the whole group. I am talking to them about preparing for careers that may not exist yet. I word it that way. I said, one of our main goals is to teach you critical thinking, to teach you to adapt. Any profession you get into, especially in healthcare, is going to have ongoing continuous education. It's going to be part of your job because things change. You don't want the doctor that learned the surgery 30 years ago to not have any updates, right? So it's constant adapting, and we've known that. We've known that, but now the rapidness of it, as you spoke to, is so quick. And so I just talk to them all the time about being open to new learning how to adapt to changes, learning how to adapt to a failure, because those are the things that are going to carry them through. And all we can do is prepare them. We talked about employability skills, communication and that kind of thing. So we want to prepare them well-rounded for a career, but that career is going to be changing.
Right. And so that's why I was thinking they call these things soft skills, but I was thinking, I don't like that term because it almost seems pejorative to call it a soft skill. I think there are skills like cooperation, problem solving, creativity that can apply to no matter what the job is that they're going to be plugged into 20, 30 years from now. It's going to be useful no matter what. Whereas if you focus too much on, say, HTML or whatever it is you want to teach kids, it's not that I'm necessarily against that, but if you get hyper focused on certain skills that 5-10 years from now would be useless, I think that's where we run into some problems. So we have to be careful how we balance that out.
Yeah.
Stacy, Khadija?
Stacy, you go first.
Yeah, I think of the soft skills, life skills, evergreen things that are going to stick with you longer than talking about mitosis. Much as I think that they really should care about cell division, a lot of times that's not the first thing that's on a 7th grader's mind, right? Much as I wish that it would be. So I think about that also in terms of the idea that we try to give them experiences that are gonna stick with them longer than the actual content. And also what you were saying, Todd, about you're trying to make sure that we're teaching for, or having a public education system that is focused on making sure kids are getting out of school with something that they can do, whatever that is. Like CTE is focused on career, has a career focus. And a lot of times when you ask kids, what do you want to be, if they're in middle school, they may or may not know. Mostly they may not know. So you want to, kind of have a balance of that kind of focus. But, the idea that they're also having these life skills that are going to get them through no matter what. Because there was something going around, I think, on Twitter just last week that Palm was, the Palm Pilot company was worth, at this moment in history, worth more than Apple and Amazon combined.
Wow. Crazy.
Yeah. And we know how that turned out.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Sure.
So it's just, these things come and go, and it's impossible, when you're standing right here in 2022 to 100% know what you're going to be, what's going to happen. And especially if you're 12.
Right.
So we have to, have a broader focus than that, and especially with technology. The other thing that I'm thinking is when I first started, in being an instructional technology facilitator, one of the really popular videos that we would start trainings out with was that pace of change video. I don't know if you guys remember it from probably maybe 6-8 years ago. We don't show that video so much anymore, but it's still.
Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
And when you talk about exponential change, it is still very true. And we are on that exponential growth line, and it's not getting any less steep.
Right.
So
go ahead, Khadija.
Also actually providing more sensory-based experiences to students as well. Especially it's being used in special education for autism, for ADD. So students are actually experiencing, in a couple of countries, these things are being adapted for those things as well. So right now, there is a lot of potential to actually gain more skills from these things. And with group chatting, even in VR settings, we can now do group chatting as well. So more social skills can be increased as well.
Yeah. Good point. So Michael Frost, I think he's watching here in South Carolina, someone that I've known for a while. He says, while no computer program will ever replace educators, will AI-driven programs provide a tool to fill the void of teacher shortages in the way of providing tools to teachers and paraprofessionals to assist in addressing learning gaps for some while simultaneously accelerating learning for others? Anybody want to answer that? Thank you, Michael, for tuning in.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of hope so, honestly. I mean, at this point, we need the help, and I think it could be done appropriately, and it might be useful.
Yeah.
I've read about, there are programs now that are AI-driven adaptive learning programs. They're being used a lot in face-to-face classrooms. I have two worries about them from an instructional technology point of view. The first is if we're putting kids on buses and having parents drive them through the car rider line to bring them to our buildings, then we have to have a balance of screen time versus our face-to-face time. So yes, and make sure that our face-to-face time is worth it. So your middle school science experience is, that we have, block time, 50-minute class periods, however it is that your day-to-day, schedule is set up. But they go to math, they come in, open your Chromebook, get into your learning management system, do your thing. How much of your time is spent staring at that screen? Close your Chromebook, go down the hall, open up, go to, ELA class, open up your Chromebook, get into your LMS, do your thing, close your Chromebook, go to science, do the thing. Why drive to school, right? So we have to have a balance. Okay. So that's my one thing. And then the second thing, we haven't talked about this yet, but who's designing them?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And, and we know tech is predominantly who? It's not me. It's not. So are the algorithms that are deciding these things, people of color? Are they accessible? Are they, I've even read that headsets, that there's a difference between male and female pupil distances.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea about that, but that causes the queasiness, dizziness that some people feel. So we have to make sure that we as educators know these things so that we get our students, all of our students to be there. Because I can't imagine the things that need to be known. I can't, because I am who I am and I'm not all those other people.
So Michael said, especially in an elementary environment where teachers are more generalist and tend to gravitate to subject matter they like most while steering away from other subject material.
Yeah.
Thank you, Michael. So I think one of my concerns is we're almost kind of doing an experiment on this generation of kids. We've already been doing experiments in terms of they have cell phones in their hands. They're on their cell phones a lot. They're using social media like no other generation obviously has, because it didn't exist. And the question is, we still, we're still just one or two generations of it getting into this digital stuff with brain architecture and central nervous systems that were not designed to do this on a regular basis. Our central nervous systems, our brains are designed for a much slower paced world, a much more nature based, in flow with nature kind of system. And I wonder if the increasing amount of mental health issues we see with young people, anxiety, depression, and so forth, I'm wondering if that's going to be exacerbated by these technologies, or if there's an opportunity to actually improve that through these technologies.
I think I will just take Stacey's point. Everything needs to be done in balance. It needs to be balanced out, because we are in a stage where we cannot live without technology, and our students cannot learn without that. So we need to be more adaptive, and we need to make it balanced so that it's easy for the students to go through. Okay, we will live a human being life, but we will work with the technology as well. So we can both, they can balance both of these things together.
Good
Yes.
point.
Got to be balanced. One of the things that I love about augmented reality, it's how I see things. So, I was an athlete when I was younger, learning anatomy. Anatomy is not flat. We've been teaching it on paper forever. So when I can not only explain it to them, but show them, because in my brain for years, I've been seeing these three-dimensional things, and I realized not everybody does that. I read some books 2 summers ago. It sounds like that might be like an ADHD thing. So I think, everybody's brain is different.
Sure.
And I have always been very good at visualizing three-dimensional. Not everyone does. So to be able to use that tool to teach anatomy, I think is wonderful. And then if you take it a step further to now our surgeons are using that to prepare for a surgery. They're viewing your organs in 3 dimensions before they cut you open. That's a huge, help. A lot better than imaging that we've had previously. So I think there's a huge opportunity in the technology. I think the greatest point that Stacy made is it's who's designing it and what input was, went into the design, because I think there's just so much possibility for this to be really useful for different people, because different people learn with different tools.
Right.
We just have to be careful about the uses.
Sorry, Stacey, just one more point. Is that when we are looking at all of these technology, we are looking more towards self-directed learning. If we are looking at chatbots or using gamification or anything like that, so it creates a certain type of isolation for the students. And even if students are more inclined towards, okay, we will play VR games all day long, then it can be more destructive towards their behavior. And secondly, it can cause conditions like depression, like you said. It can be harmful if it's used in too much excess. It can be destructive for them.
Yeah. And again, I think is that balance idea is like sometimes when you're really in the flow of something and that is like that experience is really, you just lose track of time. It's that immersive experience, whether it's, in a headset or you're just like really into your project, whatever it is. But then sometimes you can be super stuck and you can't get started. And so you need people. So you need that face-to-face environment, and you need your group, and you need your people, and so that you have to. That's when we were talking earlier. And you said, "Is it ever going to be replaced?" And I think that's why we're always going to need both, because you don't want that isolation of always working by yourself, because that's not good for people, and you can't put the outdoors in a headset. We need trees and outside. I don't know. They're not, even you could probably pump chemicals into smell-o-vision somehow, but it's still not going to be the same.
Right. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. It was interesting. So when I did a presentation several years ago, I was talking about, speculating on the future of education. And at the time, Google was developing Google Glass. And that was supposed to really take off. And we were all supposed to by now have these Google glasses where, AR was going to be, everywhere you walked. Like you meet somebody, you would see they would do facial recognition, pull up their Facebook profile. You'd be able to know who it was and a little bit of their background. And then that fell apart because I think people felt like, I don't want to walk around and have people's cameras staring at me. So it became like people would wear Google glasses and then people would get upset, like, don't point that at me. So, it's be interesting to see how that, if there's a way that we get around that. Because Maggie, I take your point, like, and for those of you who don't know, augmented reality essentially is similar to virtual reality. Instead of replacing your entire visual field, it's like overlays on reality. So you could be looking at a plant and you would still see the plant in reality, but it might identify it and pull up like your visual field the name of that plant as an example. Yeah. But you're saying they're using it, and I've seen that with the medical. It's such a, you think about it, for medical students how powerful and amazing that is, instead of, like you said, just doing things on flat surfaces, flat screens. Yeah.
But again, and that's why I teach my students about it, because it's being used to help diagnose. It's being used as a pain management tool. I mean, you're seeing these tools like used multiple ways. And so I want people to be aware.
Yeah.
And I think that's, the challenge we have as early adopters in education is just sharing what we have learned, what we've experienced, and why we think it's important, to continue to share. Because I do think we need some educators ready. I think this Web3 metaverse is coming a lot quicker than people are ready for. And that was the problem with Google Glass, is they weren't prepared.
Right. And I think, sorry, go ahead.
I was just thinking, one of the things that really got me on social media was Snapchat, because the kids then understood augmented reality. Pokemon Go came out, the kids were doing Snapchat, and I could easily explain at that point what augmented reality was, what virtual reality was, and people weren't scared of it. And it was fun and it was exciting, and Snapchat spectacles didn't have that problem that Google Glass had.
Right. I think this is kind of like one of the takeaway points for me tonight, is that the metaverse is coming. And I think educators need to go out and equip themselves with the knowledge of what the metaverse is, what the plans are for it, what they're planning to do with it, and the opportunities and also the potential problems that poses. But it's coming, and it's going to come fast, and it's going to be as much of a revolution as when we got, personal computers into our schools, connected to the internet. I think it's going to be that much of a shift in the way we operate our schools. My last question to you is this, because we're running out of time. I don't know if you guys read over the summer, there was a Google technician, somebody who worked for Google's AI department, and he claimed that Lambda, which is their super powerful AI, is now conscious. Now that's what he claims. I love thinking about that kind of stuff. Like, when will artificial intelligence be considered conscious? I don't really buy it that it's conscious yet, but I don't know if have any of you read about that and thought about that and wondered about the sort of the ethical implications of moving into virtual spaces, but also these artificial, like if we do have an artificial intelligence teacher, and a student cusses at are they going to get in trouble? Like, have you thought about some of these weird potential ethical things that may come up with these technologies? And if so, go ahead and share those.
I think it all depends upon how they are programmed. So if somebody has programmed that way, okay, if somebody says something wrong, we will just do this to them. but it's scary in a sort of way, but at the same time, I think it's a good thing as well.
I think before you put anything into your classroom, you have rules, right? So you've got, if a Chromebook shows up in your classroom, it's a piece of technology, it comes with rules. If AI shows up in your classroom, it's a piece of technology, it comes with rules. So I think that, it's just like that intentionality piece behind it. You don't just, have instructional technology show up and then you figure it out afterwards. You decide what you're using it for, and you have a plan in advance. So
great point, Stacy.
I agree with Stacy. I think there's potential, but there's got to be a plan, and we need to know where this technology came from and what purpose it was designed for, and we will plan around that.
All right. Well, I'm going to let you guys go. I thank you for giving us an hour of your evening tonight. Maggie, Stacy, Khadija. Khadijah's coming all the way from Malaysia. From the it's morning there, so go get your coffee. And thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and having this conversation. And I wish you guys the best. And hopefully we can do this again sometime.
Yes, thanks for having us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. All right, everybody. That was a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed that discussion. We're going to continue to have these kind of conversations. We're going to have one at the end of August on the 31st. We're going to do our second episode. It's going to be on sustainable education models. I'm going to bring in 2 administrators from schools in a small rural town in Virginia called Floyd. And they're going to be talking, we're going to almost be like the opposite of what we talked about tonight. Not necessarily about technology, but about how to work with young people in a very sustainable way that honors their humanity. And we're going to get their ideas on that. And coming up, our next live stream is going to be on Sunday, I believe at 7 o'clock. We're going to do a huge back to school special here through the SCEA. We've got Sherry East, our president, who will be there. Cassie Moore, one of our members. Colleen O'Connell is going to be on there, and a whole host of people. Just giving you some back to school information. We hope that you'll join us for that one on Sunday night at 7 o'clock. And then next week on the 17th, Michelle Carr is going to lead us through some stress reduction. So trying to balance out our topics and do a wide variety of topics that you hopefully you'll find engaging, relevant, and interesting. And we love your comments. Thanks so much to Michael Frost for tuning in tonight and sharing his thoughts. We appreciate that. I want to personally invite you to join our movement. If you haven't done that already, we would love to have you as a part of the South Carolina Education Association. We're the only association where when you join us, you're joining your local association, the state association, and the national. And we believe it's important to be active and involved on all 3 levels. A lot of policies that impact our schools come from Washington, D.C. So we have to advocate for our profession at the national level. And nobody's doing a better job at that than the NEA. And I'm very proud to be a member of the NEA, an association and the largest teachers union, the largest labor union in the United States, fighting for you, fighting for your colleagues, fighting for bus drivers, fighting for custodial staff, cafeteria staff, for all support staff, for administrators and for teachers and for students. And really living their values. The NEA does such a good job of standing by their values, and I'm proud to be a member. Lots of amazing benefits because you're a member of a union with over 3 million people. We've got amazing benefits like the free college benefit. If you haven't heard of this, if you join the SCEA, you can give a free college benefit, an online associate's or bachelor's degree at an accredited university, to a cousin, to your niece, to your nephew, to your aunt, to your uncle, to anybody in your family who wants to get a good degree, but maybe they haven't been able to find the money to do it. You can give them free college education by being a member of the SCEA. I don't know if you know that. Then we have credit card deals. I've saved alone. I'm not going to show you my credit card because I'm not going to show you the back, but this is my NEA credit card. And I applied for it. The first billing cycle, I got $200 cash back, and I get 3% cash back on any category that I want. And I chose online purchases. So every time I make an online purchase, I have essentially a 3% coupon off of everything I buy. That alone has paid for my dues for the year. And there's so many other benefits: insurance, liability coverage, auto loan, personal loans, travels, cruises, flights, all kinds of benefits, Costco warehouse membership benefits. I mean, and then not to mention our micro-credential portal. If you have not checked it out, go to cool.us. And if you scroll down, you'll see a link to our micro-credential portal. All of our members get free access to about 200 of these micro-credential courses. They're amazing courses. You can take them on your own time. They're free. And the South Carolina Department of Education has said that they will accept them for renewal credits. Now, you need to check with your district person who issues your credits to make sure before you dive into the classes. But we have an amazing array of micro-credential classes for you. But more important than all these benefits is becoming part of a movement, becoming part of a collective voice to stand up and say, here are the wages we deserve. We deserve to be paid commensurate with the importance of the work that we do. And this is not just for classroom teachers, but for everybody who's working at that school to make things happen. The people that are preparing and serving lunch to our students, the people who are transporting our kids to and from school, they deserve a living wage. They deserve good benefits. And the more of us that come together to fight together, to stand up together, the more we can get done. We can improve our wages, improve our working conditions. But as long as we stay isolated, as long as we say, well, I'm just going to close my classroom door and do my thing and not worry about it and hope that somehow, some way, my pay increases and that my working conditions improve, or that maybe one day they'll get rid of other duties as assigned, or at least delineate what that means. Instead of hoping that's going to happen, join us. Come together as one. Let's unite and make some demands for the things that we want. But we have to do that together. And so I invite you to do that tonight. Go to jointhescea.org. You can see it at the bottom of the screen. Jointhescea.org and become a part of our movement. And here's the thing. If you're watching this and you're a member, or you do decide to join, and you want to create content like this, reach out to me. There's a contact form at cool.us. If you'd like to do a podcast, or you'd like to do videos, or you'd like to do like Pete Stone's videos, or like Cassie Moore's videos on literacy and social justice, or you'd like to write for us for our blog, we are all about giving voice to our members, listening to our members' voice, amplifying their voice, giving them platforms to speak out on the things that are important to them. Thank you for tuning in tonight. We will see you Sunday night at 7 o'clock. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. For those of you starting the school year, God bless and have a wonderful, wonderful start to your year. I love you. And if there's any way the South Carolina Education Association can support you this year, please reach out to us. We are here to support you and to help deliver the kind of classrooms and the kind of schools and districts and school system that you and your students deserve. Good night.